New polling out of Iowa and New Hampshire indicates that Bernie Sanders is indeed rising, and this is good news, especially after he has overcome a number of obstacles, including a press that has no interest in covering him, and some heart concerns that he had earlier in his campaign, which he has completely recovered from. Now, let's show you what this looks like. This is a YouGov poll, and it shows that in Iowa, Bernie Sanders is tied with Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg with 23%, and Elizabeth Warren comes in fourth at 16%, Amy Klobuchar at 7%. I love that they're still trying to make Klobuchar a thing.
Here comes Amy.
Yeah, right. So
Momentum. You're feeling it.
Please stop. So how enthusiastic are Bernie Sanders voters? Well, we're supporters of Bernie Sanders, to be abundantly clear about that. But they're pretty damn enthusiastic. So enthusiastic about vote choice. 67% of the responders said that they're enthusiastic about Sanders, 61% about Warren, 52% when it comes to Buttigieg, and only 49% when it comes to Biden. Look, the reason why people support Biden is because the media keeps regurgitating this nonsense talking point about how he's supposedly the most electable. The evidence does not bear that out. But let's take a quick look at the next graph that shows the respondents who feel that the candidate is the most safe, right? So Biden has the most support in this category, with 53% of respondents saying he's the most safe. 24% of the respondents believe that Buttigieg is the most safe. 22% say Warren is, and 20% say Sanders is.
But like safe in what context? Like standing directly behind you?
Most electable.
I wouldn't say so. Yes, I know it's supposed to be electable or whatever. God, I hate all that is a measure of is who have you heard is most electable. That's all it is.
Yeah, exactly. And all you have to do is, first of all, watch Biden's debate performance or the number of gaffes he's already had on the campaign trail. He is not the most electable in that regard. He's also not the most electable when it comes to policy. I don't understand why the Democratic establishment and corporate Democrats haven't learned anything from what happened in 2016. It's like, Hillary Clinton failed miserably. I get it, not the popular vote, but the popular vote, unfortunately, under our current system of the Electoral College doesn't matter, okay? She failed, and putting up another, or propping up another candidate who's actually worse than her when it comes to policy, and essentially telling the American people, I'm not gonna change anything for you. That's not gonna make the situation better for Democrats. Biden is not more electable than Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. But if we could just briefly talk about that, the 23 with Sanders, Biden, and Buttigieg. How much is Biden angry at Buttigieg? That like so much of that support would go to him. Like Buttigieg's presence in this race is obviously his rise hurt Warren. It seems like those sort of worked at he went up as she came down, and now they're both going down a little bit. But like, oh God, if he was not in this, who knows? Maybe a bunch of it would go to Klobuchar or somebody like that. But I have to think that a lot of that would go to Biden. He might find himself in a pretty dominant position in some of these early states, if not for Buttigieg.
I'm very happy that Buttigieg is still in the race for that reason. I'm glad that they're splitting up the vote in that regard with that constituency. And there were a lot of accusations that Elizabeth Warren was doing the same to Bernie Sanders, but they actually there's some crossover, but I think that they've built two completely different coalitions. And so I'm not as worried about Warren taking votes away from Bernie. I actually think that it is the case, though, as you mentioned, with Biden and Buttigieg. I do want to move on to how the press has been covering this. And look, I also want to be fair to The Hill, because I think that shows like Rising have done a good job in covering Bernie Sanders. They've given him a lot of positive attention. I'm grateful for that, because there has been a bit of a media blackout when it comes to Bernie. But there was a tweet by The Hill today, and it said 30 days from Iowa, it's anybody's ball game, and then they include a picture of Biden, Buttigieg, and Warren, but obviously Bernie Sanders is taken out of there.
Yeah, and so the reason I responded to was, look, and The Hill, by the way, they publish both of our editorials on a regular basis, so credit to their editorial section for that. But their Twitter account is god awful. This is not I mean, lots of people do bad stuff like this, but regularly, like you will find they have a couple of politicians that they like to quote. Trump is one of them. They just quote their lies. That's the tweet. Is Trump says this, no context added, feel free to retweet it, and you'll just see it over, because they like to tweet the same thing over and over again. It just amplifies the lies over and over and over and over again. And it is either the product of an incredible amount of ignorance about human psychology and how lies are spread, or it is willful, that they sort of get off on helping to spread lies.
Yeah.
And they're good in other aspects. This is specifically about their social media activity. But so now I've taken it sort of just joking about it on Twitter, but I have regularly responded to their tweets saying, you gotta do better, you gotta add context, you gotta acknowledge when someone is saying something that we know is not true, but they've done none of that.
Right.
There's been no evolution.
Are you saying that the press doesn't listen to our suggestions about how to cover things accurately and fairly? Oh, that's weird.
Pretty much, yeah. And it's just whoever's managing their Twitter, man, you gotta work on this.
You're right. I mean, you can't, and I get frustrated when people do this with TYT because we're all different and we have different perspectives. Generally speaking, we're progressive, but we might have different viewpoints on various news stories. And I hate when all of us get lumped in together as the same, because we're not the same. And I don't want to do that with the Hill, but you're right, there is a clear difference.
It's a specific little thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about New Hampshire because the polls look great in New Hampshire for Bernie Sanders. So according to this same poll, YouGov, Bernie Sanders is at 27% in New Hampshire, followed by Biden at 25%, Warren at 18%, Buttigieg at 13%, and Klobuchar at 7%. In New Hampshire, 65% of Sanders' backers called themselves enthusiastic about supporting him ahead of all other candidates. And look, what's really clear in the enthusiasm for Bernie Sanders is the number of small dollar donors and how he is able to consistently outraise his, the people he's competing against with small dollar donations. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's on and popping at the Sanders campaign.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the huge amount of money that he was able to raise, that both looks good, assuming people cover it, but also it is now going to be plowed into those early states. And some of these candidates, like Buttigieg, is doing pretty well in both Iowa and New Hampshire still. That is partially because he had his little rise earlier in the polls, but it's also because he spent millions and millions and millions of dollars in those specific states. Bernie's gonna be able to match him in that in the month leading up to Iowa and a little bit more for the next state. But then he's also gonna have a ton more money to go into the next set of states leading up to Super Tuesday. Yeah.
So one other thing that I wanted to mention is there has been a huge swing for Bernie Sanders, especially in New Hampshire. So let's take a quick look at that. So right now, 31% say that Bernie Sanders is their primary choice. In November, it was only 18%. So I just wanted to draw attention to that swing. There was also a swing in the wrong direction for Warren. Now she's at 22%, whereas in November, she was at 37%.
Jeez.
So it's pretty significant.
Yeah, and I just saw polling for New Mexico where Sanders was ahead. That's a little bit farther down the line, and he's doing pretty well in Nevada as well.
And one final question that I have for you, John. So as we know, Castro has suspended his campaign. He has now come out to endorse Elizabeth Warren. Do you think that his endorsement will make any difference?
It's hard to say with any endorsements. I think that, like we covered when he dropped out, I think he left the race probably in a better position with general better feelings amongst the electorate than a lot of the other candidates have left after like shredding their reputation. He didn't do that. He left, people respected the campaign that he ran. Pretty much everyone, including the people running against him, wished that he had had more time on the debate stage and things like that. And so I think that will be helpful. He's probably gonna be a pretty good campaigner for her. I don't expect it'll be an endorsement at the same level as like AOC endorsing, or if Obama ends up endorsing someone. But it would be one of the higher tier ones, I assume.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.